Hey friends, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story. Gently, you settle back wherever you are on a couch that dips in the middle or the edge of a bed where the sheets have cooled and you can feel the little sounds of your room. The window tick and the quiet hum of something electric. Outside, the streetlight throws a pale circle like a thumbprint. In that soft glow, we'll walk into a place where a community thought it knew itself, until one arrest unstitched years of certainty. You'll smell damp pavement, hear a late train dragging its iron breath, and notice how an ordinary Tuesday can carry a secret like a pebble in its shoe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is on your clock. I love imagining this story unfurling across different nights. Now, turn off the lights, switch on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You step onto Harbor Street the way you always do, with your shoulders tucked against the faint October breeze and your earbuds quiet so you can listen for the mood of the town. It's late, but windows still glow behind lace curtains. Somebody reheats soup, somebody argues in a whisper, and somewhere a dog stirs and chooses not to bark. The local paper box rattles in its metal throat, and the headline big block letters, almost smug, says, "Arrest in 2003 disappearance." You stare at the date and feel the years arrange themselves like dominoes. You were younger then. The town was, too. You walk past Caldwell's Deli, where the bell used to ring even when no one came in. That was the first strange detail people joked about back then, the deli's haunted bell and how it would jangle on windless afternoons. Tonight, the bell is gone. The door is locked, and a fresh paint sign leans against the glass like a tired guard. A light flickers in the kitchen, and you're certain you smell dill and mustard and the ghost of sliced onions. You keep moving, because your feet know the route even if your heart drags. Harbor Street to the creek to the old footbridge, and the bridge to the cul-de-sac, where the missing girl, Eva Marlin, 17, track captain, and a magnet for trouble and kindness alike, vanished after the homecoming bonfire. You remember candles set along the railing like small, stubborn suns and flyers, with the same photo printed so many times the ink bled into a permanent bruise. Tonight, you feel the grain of the wooden rail under your palm. The creek is low, whispering over stones. Somewhere, a radio murmurs a late-night show. The host is laughing at his own joke, low and kind. The town has been half asleep for years, and the news of an arrest works its way through the ribs of the place like a second heartbeat, unfamiliar and a bit too fast. You can almost hear the whispers through the screens. Did you hear? After all this time? Him? You pause under the ash tree where people used to tie ribbons in school colors. It's taller now, moodier, its limbs scribbling dark notes across the sky. You remember the search parties, the fluorescent vests, and the early dusk of October that made everyone's faces look like stories they didn't want to tell. You remember the sheriff's voice on the courthouse steps, that low, careful promise, "We'll keep at it." A historical truth you carry like a coin in your pocket. By 2003, the National DNA Index System had been running for 5 years, quietly expanding its library of genetic barcodes, quietly building the future in which old cases sometimes wake up. You didn't think much about that then. None of you really did. You watched the river. You watched one another. You move along the path, gravel purring under your shoes, and you think about the house that sits just beyond the cul-de-sac, the white bungalow where the man they arrested lived and worked and waved. You can see it from here if you squint through the branches. The porch with 3 mismatched wind chimes, a lawn that always looked half-mowed, and that one peculiar habit he had of setting a pair of boots beside the steps. Not on them, not inside, beside them, as if the boots were a guard detail on break. No one agreed on the boots. Some said it meant humility, a shoemaker respecting his tools. Others said it was a quiet warning, a private ritual. It was just a sliver of oddness, the little itch of it you never could scratch. You remember the night of the bonfire like a memory you borrowed from someone else, because psychologists still argue about whether memory is a faithful record or a story our minds write again each time. And the debate gets louder in small towns with big secrets. You remember sparks rising into the county dark sky, the sweetness of scorched marshmallow, and the sharp snap when somebody tossed in a pine bough. You remember Eva laughing with a paper cup in her hand, someone's varsity jacket draped across her shoulders like a borrowed sunset. You remember how you lost sight of her in a scrum of seniors posing for photos, and how the coach's whistle cut through the night, shrill and playful, a little final. You stop where the path narrows and the cattails lean in. This creek has heard every version of the story. In one, Eva took the footbridge and never made it to the other side. In another, she climbed into a car you didn't recognize, a shape with headlights that blinked like a tired animal. In another, she hid, ran, and chose some secret exit the rest of you wouldn't understand. The new headline says there's been an arrest, but it doesn't tell you which version of the night is true. You pull your phone from your pocket and cup it so the screen's pale rectangle doesn't look rude against the dark. Messages crowd in from people you haven't spoken to since the yearbook still smelled like glue. Did you read? Can you believe it? It's him, the shoemaker. Your mind flinches on the word. You see him in your memory, a man whose hands always looked a little battered, whose grin lived mostly in his eyes. He would fix your soles, your laces, and your weird squeak, and he'd do it for a price that made your granddad nod. You picture the low counter, the cardboard box of mismatched eyelets, and the scent of glue that clung to the place like a loyal dog. You remember the chimes on the porch, clattering even when the air lay flat over town. That was the joke, remember? Spirits, or fishing line, someone said. Either way, the weather's here. You take the long curve around to the cul-de-sac, a necklace of driveways laid against old oak roots. The bungalows hunch like tired shoulders. Lawns surrender to clover. A late TV pours blue light over a living room. The camera inside is tracking a storm swelling over some other county, not yours. You pause at the base of the shoemaker's walkway, not crossing the line where private space begins, though the whole town has been crossing and recrossing that line in its imagination all day, camped on the man's porch in sympathetic speculation. The porch boards shine from years of sweeping. The boots are not there. The chimes stay still, like 3 held breaths. You think of the ways this town has rehearsed its shock, a parade of casseroles whenever sorrow comes to a door, the volunteer fire department's silent salutes, and a jar with a handwritten sign near every register when someone needs help with hospital bills. You think about how kindness and curiosity share a fence line here, how gossip is often just fear in work boots. And yet, after the deputies left with him in handcuffs this morning, he didn't fight, they say. He didn't look left or right. He just moved. Like a man who forgot his body, you could hear 2 kinds of quiet. One was relief, grief's older cousin. The other was doubt, stubborn and black-humored, saying, "Are you sure?" You aren't. Not yet. You listen to the night. You listen for something that will tell you which story to believe. The sheriff held a brief conference outside the courthouse at noon. You watched it on your phone at lunch, sitting on the curb, a bite of apple turning brown in your hand. He didn't say much, which is his way. Promises are heavy, and he carries enough. He said the arrest came after new analysis of old material, and you knew instantly. Science had been busy while the town slept. Another true thing. Back in the late 1980 seconds, the polymerase chain reaction, the molecular photocopier, taught investigators to turn one whisper of DNA into a chorus. And from that chorus, sometimes, a single note that matches a throat. The science gets better. The questions get sharper. The rooms where decisions happen get colder. You turn away from the bungalow and walk toward the community board by the mailbox cluster. It carries the same layers it always does. Yoga on Tuesdays, piano lessons, and lost cat. Maybe not lost, just independent. Tonight, we know the stems on stare. End quote. Someone has pinned a fresh candle schedule for a vigil that will happen, whether anyone asks permission or not, because this town believes in standing up and counting itself in the dark. A post-it is tucked beside it, a scribble you recognize from the librarian. We are open late this week. You smile without meaning to. Libraries extend their hours during grief here. That's a civic ritual as solid as the 4th of July parade. Another odd little detail lurks at the edge of the board. A photocopied flyer for the Amateur Astronomy Club meeting by the old water tower. A hand-drawn arrow points to a note. Meteor shower peak Saturday, bring a blanket. Even in a week like this, people will tilt their faces to falling stardust and make the same wishes we always make. Find her, know, forgive. You begin the slow walk home with the town in your pocket and the creek at your back. Your heel scuffs a chalk mark on the sidewalk, the kind kids draw when they invent a game that's all rules and no referee, and you think about the rules you all grew up with. Lock your doors, walk together at night. Trust, but keep your keys. And then the rules you never wrote but followed anyway. If you suspect, you stay quiet, unless you're certain. If you're certain, you speak softly, unless you're sure they'll listen. The arrest has cracked some of those rules, like eggs. You can feel the new season of this story breathing down the street, thready and impatient. You pass the hardware store where the owner still keeps a jar of peppermint sticks by the register. You see the church bulletin board where the pastor cut letters from blue paper to spell "Pray for Peace." Though some of the P's have lost their curves and look like R's now. An accidental message, "Pray for Race," that made the older ladies furious for an afternoon until the choir director fixed it with tape. You pass the mural, the high school art club painted after the 5th year, with no answers. A girl running along the creek with lanterns floating above like citrus moons. A path lifting into a star-salted sky. Someone added a shoelace loop to her shoe, a tiny bright detail that made the town smile. You wonder how that mural will look tomorrow, whether the arrest will make the paint darker or the stars brighter. At your door, you pause with your key hovering. You can feel the weight of the night pressing its thumb to your pulse. In the morning, the coffee shop will offer free refills to anyone who wants to talk in a low voice. The barista will write names on cups and hesitate a little at his. People will pretend not to remember how often they saw him, how many friendly nods they banked like coins that they don't spend. They will try on their opinions like coats, shrugging into this version or that. Some will say the system doesn't arrest a man for nothing. Others will say the system loves a neat ending. And the scholars on the edges of all our lives, the ones who study memory and fear and the social choreography of small towns, will be delighted and baffled all at once. Arguing in journals and under conference hotel chandeliers about the way communities build myth and call it protection, you slide the key into the lock and let yourself in. Your rooms are exactly as you left them. The chair with the sweater, the book open like a tent, and the plant that never asks for much but thrives when you remember. You set your phone face down because the screen will bloom again with updates if you let it, and you don't want to see the text you know will come. Did you ever notice anything? You did. You didn't. You noticed everything, and it all felt normal until it didn't. You close the door, and in that hush, you can still hear the river, the chimes that didn't move, and the deep exhale of a town preparing to hear itself tell the truth. The headline is a door. Tomorrow you'll walk through it. Tonight, you stand in the hall and listen for the house to settle around you, for the story to make a space in your chest where it can sit until the next fact arrives, bright as a match, small as a grain of grit, just enough to change the way the whole thing feels in your hands. Morning arrives like someone has rinsed the town in cool water. You wake before your alarm because you dreamt you were standing on the footbridge again, dry leaves skittering over your shoes, a whistle blowing somewhere you couldn't place. You lie there for a moment, listening to the soft churn of your fan and the pale chatter of birds calibrating the day. You tell yourself you'll move slow, but your mind sprints ahead past the kitchen, past the front door, to a bell over a deli that doesn't ring anymore, and a porch where chimes prefer to hold their breath. You make coffee the way you always do, and yet the mug feels heavier, as if names could steep in ceramic. When you step outside, the morning holds that crisp nothingness before work trucks begin and dogs negotiate the edges of lawns. The paper has been delivered with unusual accuracy. It kisses the center of your welcome mat. Headline confident. Arrest made in Eva Marlin case. New DNA analysis cited. You read the first paragraph, and a line slides under your ribs. No further details at this time. The town thrives on details. The way sourdough needs a starter. You can feel everyone trying to feed the day with rumor. You cut across to Brightside Coffee before 9. The bell on its door. A cheerful version of Caldwell's old one. Actual metal on metal. Honest as a handshake. Inside, steam braids with cinnamon. And the chalkboard menu has grown a new chalk scribble overnight. Community room open. No purchase needed come talk. That's what grief looks like here. Someone sets out chairs and trusts you. You take your spot near the window where the view catches the mural the students painted lanterns like citrus moons, a runner with a shoelace loop, just too perfect to be an accident. The barista, Mare, writes your name with a little star instead of the dot on the I. Habit. Mercy. You can't tell. You hear the conversation ebb and thicken. Old teachers, a mail carrier, and a guy in a suit who you're pretty sure still plays bass in someone's garage. It's a chorus of maybes. Maybe they found something on the shoemaker's workbench. Maybe this is like those cases they solve with those family DNA websites. Maybe he's the patsy. Maybe he's the thing you missed all along. A quiet truth pads into your mind, careful, because it knows it might be unwelcome this early. In 2018, investigators in California identified the Golden State Killer through investigative genetic genealogy, changing the way cold cases across America would be approached. You remember reading about distant cousins and family trees blooming into suspects. You sip, and the coffee tastes like the word irreversible. You hear Mare tell someone, "He always tipped." I know that doesn't mean, and then her voice dissolves into the hiss of the milk wand. Good people say it doesn't mean anything, because they're trying to protect the town from an easy story. The mind loves easy stories, the way a cat loves a square of sunlight. You head to the library, because the librarian promised late hours, and because when the world tilts, a library anchors like a lighthouse. The building smells like dust and possibility. Miss? Dorian sits behind the desk with a thermos and a stack of forms that probably shouldn't be that tall. She sees you, and her face folds into the kind of smile that says, "Come on then, we'll make sense of this together." On a side table, she set up a display books about missing persons, grief, and forensic science, but the center title is odd in the best way, The Social Life of Small Towns. A sticky note on its cover. Not all of this will be kind to us. Maybe that's fine. You settle into an armchair in a pool of sunlight that finds you like a searchlight that is gentle, not interrogative. Miss? Dorian speaks low, the way people do when news still hasn't chosen whether it's comfort or crisis. There's a forum board from back then, she says. Archived. The posts will make you laugh and cry. We all thought we knew how the internet worked. You nod. In 2003, those message boards felt like town halls without thresholds. And you remember how the threads braided hope with harm. The librarian tells you where to look, and you pull up grainy screenshots that look like they've aged even though they're digital. People typed like they were being chased caps, ellipses, and certainty punctuated by prayer hands. Typed as, "An hour goes by, maybe 2. You read a post from a kid who swore he saw a blue sedan idling by the footbridge. Then you read an answer from someone else insisting it was a teal SUV, not a sedan, and, anyway, the engine sounded wrong. You read about Eva's backpack. Was it on? Was it off? Was it even a backpack? Or was it that tote she got at the art fair with the bird on it? You read someone mention the shoemaker in a tone that isn't accusation or affection, just the way you'd note a mailbox, a bench, or a thing that is definitely there. You scroll until your eyes go glassy. Miss Dorian materializes with a glass of water like she's trained in a very polite form of triage. Stop when your brain turns to a snow globe, she says. Everything looks pretty and nothing is useful. You laugh because she's right. You stare out the window, and beyond the glass, the town moves, like always, and yet slanted. On the bulletin board by the door, between the usual piano lessons and lost earbuds, someone has posted a tiny index card with a question you don't expect. What would forgiveness look like if we needed it? It's written in the careful print of someone who doesn't want to be misunderstood. You decide to walk again, because walking feels like a ritual that might keep the story honest. Outside, The air has warmed a little. It's the kind of day where shadows look freshly laundered. You head toward Caldwell's Deli because you can't stop thinking about that bell, how it rang and rang when the air lay still. The fresh paint sign is gone. The door's propped open while two men in overalls argue about whether eggshell is a color or a suggestion. You breathe dill and vinegar and memory. On the back wall, the old menu board hangs dusty. Reuben's, half sours, and a soup of the day that never changed tomato basil, even when it wasn't. You wonder whether the bell ever rang because air moves differently near grief or because someone loved the idea of a haunted sandwich shop. A detail swims up. The shoemaker once told a kid that if you tie your laces with a double knot on a day with a north wind, you'll always find your way home. It sounded like flirtation with folklore, a way to make kids laugh as their moms paid. But you remember it now because the north wind is in the forecast. Because finding your way home is a sentence that suddenly has weight. You aim yourself toward the bungalow, though you don't intend to trespass only to witness the way people leave flowers outside a gate they never otherwise notice. On the way, you pass a yard sale that is sprawled without elegance over a driveway. VHS tapes, a bread machine, and a box of keys with no explanation. The woman running it says everything is $1, and you pick up a key because you think maybe people will say the future has this shape, teeth, and a loop. But the woman says, "Oh, those? Those are from the shoemaker. He'd collect the ones left in boots for too long." Said they were residues of intention. You can't help it. The phrase settles into you. A stone that will warm slowly as you carry it. Residues of intention. A weird side detail, but there it is. A person who keeps keys because they once opened something. You drop your dollar in a jar, and the woman thanks you like you've adopted a cat. At the bungalow, the police tape is gone, replaced by a quiet that feels maintained, like a lawn. Neighbors have placed a vase of wildflowers on the porch because people can never decide where to put their sympathy. The chimes hang still, 3 vertical lines of hesitation. A neighbor stands on her steps with a broom, pretending to sweep nothing. She looks at you and shrugs, so gently you almost miss it. "I never noticed anything," she says. But then again, I never notice anything until someone else names it. Is that a me problem or a human problem? You don't have a good answer. You tell her you liked the way the boots looked beside the steps, and her face blooms into relief. "Yes," she says, like they were waiting for their own errands. The sheriff's car drifts by, unhurried. He lowers the window a few inches and nods at you, the kind of nod that makes you feel like part of the town's muscle, not just its skin. "Press it too," he says. Nothing big, just so they don't invent more than we already have. He drives on, and you stand there for a beat, with the town's clock ticking behind your ribs. You could go home. You could go to work and pretend your keyboard is a metronome. Instead, you walk to the courthouse, because when a story stands up and clears its throat, you go listen. By the time you get there, the square has that particular electricity towns generate when something public may happen. People, but not a crowd. Cameras that look tired and sleek all at once. And the statue of the pioneer woman pretending she's not eavesdropping. The press conference is small. The sheriff steps up in his one good jacket. He talks like someone laying planks across mud, solid, slow, and willing to get dirty if he has to. He says the arrest follows advances in analysis and the cooperation of multiple labs. He doesn't say familial DNA, but the words hover anyway, careful as hawks. A reporter asks whether the shoemaker confessed. The sheriff's jaw sets in that square line you've known since he played varsity ball. He invoked his right to remain silent, he says, and the phrase lands with the weight of 1,966, when the Supreme Court told us all to remember those words. Another reporter pushes, "Was there a relationship?" The sheriff exhales. "We're not prepared to discuss that." His eyes glance off you like you're reflective. You realize you're not the only one who walked through years to be here. Somebody asks about the boots, the neighbor told the internet, and the sheriff almost smiles. "We catalog items," he says. "We don't interpret them in public." The crowd chuckles, brittle, the way people do when the joke isn't really a joke. When it's done, the square exhales, and you feel people decide in real time to be decent to one another for a few more hours. You walk back toward the creek because the creek listens without taking notes. Kids on scooters ping past like punctuation. A man in a ball cap tosses crumbs to pigeons and mutters, "You think he did it? I don't." Mostly because it would be too, narrative. You grin because you know exactly what he means. Some part of you rebels against a suspect that fits too well. Another part of you recognizes that sometimes the obvious shape is real, not a trap. At the footbridge, the ash tree writes darker scribbles against the afternoon sky. The ribbons are gone, but the bark holds the memory of knots and sun-bleached fibers. You lean your elbows on the rail and watch the water shape itself around stone. A couple pauses. The woman with a stroller that's seen better days, and the man with tired eyes, and a tattoo that peeks where his sleeve gives up. They talk about whether to go to the vigil. "I don't like candles," he says, like we're asking light to work overtime. She bumps his shoulder with hers. "I like the counting," she says. "It tells me I'm not the only one who wants what I want. You don't ask what that is." Everyone wants something slightly different, answers that heal, a villain you can understand, and absolution for the ordinary moments when you didn't notice what you didn't notice. In the late afternoon, you go home and sit on the floor because chairs feel too upright for the way the day keeps showing its seams. You pull out an old shoebox, the one with prom photos and ticket stubs, and you find the Polaroid from the bonfire. A blur of orange, a grin that didn't belong to you, an arm that might have been Eva's, or might have been the person who always stood near her like punctuation, half a step behind. The paper has turned that particular yellow that Polaroids adopt, like they were born to sepia. You hold it up, and the room's shadows climb into it. You know, memory reconstruction is a thing some scientists argue that each time you recall, you rebuild, and each rebuild cements new errors. They fight over the degree, the mechanisms, and whether trauma cements or distorts. You can feel the debate hum inside your skull like a fluorescent light. How much of this is accurate, and how much is a collage of hope, fear, and emoji-flavored hindsight? Evening slides in with that long sigh small towns practice. Streetlights land slowly on their feet. The grocery store turns its sign to closed and then back to open because someone pressed the switch wrong and laughed. The astronomy club sets up blankets near the old water tower, their red flashlights drawing constellations on the ground. You consider going because looking up might reorder the math that's crowding your chest. Instead, you tie your shoes double knot because why not flirt with folklore, and you walk toward the vigil. People gather at the community board, candles cupped in plastic like small spaceships. The pastor speaks carefully, offering words that land like folded towels. Warm, useful, and not trying to fix more than words can fix. A teacher mentions the way Eva used to edit her essays in purple ink because it felt kinder than red. Someone from the track team, now older, says how she ran like the ground was lending her its speed. The shoemaker is not mentioned by name, but his porch chimes seem to tilt this way in your mind, asking to be included in the story too, if only as objects that stayed quiet when the world asked them to explain themselves. You stand beside the librarian, who has brought a tote bag full of extra candles and a small trash bag for the waxy skeletons after. "We never plan the after," she murmurs. "We just hope there is one." When the candles lift, you feel the town count itself hundreds of small tongues of light, each one loyal to the hand that holds it. Someone starts a song with only 2 notes. The night fills the rest. A gust of wind, honest and ordinary, tries to blow the flames out. People huddle their hands around them and laugh the way you laugh when a child knocks a glass of water over, and no one wants to make a big deal. After, you walk back toward Harbor Street. The deli is dark, but the new paint looks like it might always have been there. A stray cat performs a funeral for a moth beneath the streetlight. No violence, just a ritual you don't understand. Your phone buzzes with an update from a friend of a friend. They're saying, genetic genealogy, now, not officially, but confidently. You tuck the phone away because your heart wants a moment with no screens, no science, just the sound of your own shoes doing their job. At home, you open a notebook. You write down what you know and what you only think you know. Two columns that pretend they won't bleed into each other. Under KNOW you write, arrest made, right to remain silent invoked, labs involved, vigil held, town still kind. Under think you write, familial match, old sample, now loud. Boots meant something. Keys meant something. Bells can ring without wind. Chimes can stay quiet through it. You add a third column, feel, and you stare at it a long time, because naming is power, and you aren't sure which spell is safe to cast. Finally, you write, hopeful, suspicious of narrative, still in love with this place, tired. Before you sleep, you stand at the window and look out at a horizon that has replaced daylight's detail with simple blocks of shadow, tree, house, fence, sky. If you look long enough, you can almost see movement that isn't there, as if the world is rearranging itself while you blink. That's what tonight feels like. A rearrangement that needs you to be patient, to sit still so the pieces can find their fit. You think of those keys in the yard sale box, each one worn smooth by a thumb that once knew exactly what door it belonged to. Residues of intention. Maybe that's what the town is, what all towns are. The leftover shape of what we meant to do, what we meant to be for each other, and what we meant when we said we'd keep looking until we found her. Tomorrow, the labs will keep humming. The lawyers will roll their carts down cool hallways that echo. The sheriff will drink coffee he doesn't like and choose his words like nails, sharp, necessary, holding something up. The academic debates will keep fluttering under conference ceilings, privacy and public safety in a tug-of-war that no rope can survive forever, informed consent turning into a riddle with 1,000 ethical hands. You don't have to solve any of that tonight. You have to sleep enough to notice what you notice in the morning, to walk the same streets with a new patience, and to let the story be a room you enter softly, laying your hand on the wall like you could learn the house by touch. You draw your curtains halfway because you like a little moonlight when you rest. You double-check the latch on the window not because you're afraid, but because rituals make the body calm. You're not ready to forgive, and you're not ready to condemn. You're ready to witness, which is a position that requires the kind of strength you don't know you have until you're tired and still standing. In the hallway, the house settles, a conversational creak. Somewhere outside, the train drags its iron breath toward a destination you don't need to name. You turn off the lamp. You listen to the fan's steady hush. You let the town dim its own lights and draw a small square of quiet around you. The story is moving forward, whether you run with it or not. For tonight, you walk beside it, quiet shoes on familiar floors, carrying the keys you don't yet know where to try. You wake before dawn, the gray-blue light pressing against the window like a gentle question. For a moment, the world is quiet enough that you can hear your own pulse in your ears, steady, unsure, alive. The air smells faintly of rain that hasn't arrived yet. You dress without turning on the light, letting muscle memory do the work. Socks, hoodie, keys in the pocket where they've always gone. Outside, the street is slick, with dew and early mist. The town looks smaller, like it's holding its breath between sentences. You walk toward the courthouse again, not because you expect more news, but because that's where the air still hums with leftover questions. You pass the diner first, and through the glass you see familiar heads bowed over coffee, hands curved around mugs like they're keeping small campfires alive. The TV above the counter shows the morning report, the anchor's voice calm but electric. Yesterday's arrest in the Harbor County case has reignited discussion on the use of genetic genealogy. You catch the words, privacy concerns, false positives, and data ethics before the hours. Cook changes the channel to a rerun of some old sitcom. The laugh track feels wrong, too loud. You walk on. The courthouse lawn is empty, except for a single reporter sitting cross-legged near the fountain, typing into a laptop. She looks up briefly and nods fellow witnesses in a town rewriting itself. Her coffee steams in the cold. They're testing more samples today, she says, not as gossip, but as confession. From the shoemaker's shop, they think there might be something on a piece of leather. You nod. unsure if she wants a response. You both listen to the sound of the fountain, the water landing again and again in the same circle, like time rehearsing itself. You find a bench and sit. The courthouse clock ticks towards 7, the sound too deliberate for morning. Across the street, the hardware store owner flips his sign to open, though no one is ready to buy nails yet. You notice a stray ribbon caught in a branch above you, school colors faded into a shade you can't quite name. You wonder if it's the last of them, or if more are hidden in gutters and fences, tiny threads of devotion holding on past purpose. When the doors open, you go inside. The hallway smells of waxed floor and new paint. You see the sheriff talking quietly with a younger officer, their voices low but tired. On a bulletin board behind them, someone has pinned a photocopy of Eva's senior portrait soft curls, a grin just shy of laughter. The photo looks younger than you remember. Grief and memory do that. They stretch and shrink, folding years like paper until the corners don't match. The sheriff sees you and nods again. "Town's awake early," he says. You shrug. No one really slept. He studies you for a moment before saying, "We'll know more soon." Sometimes knowing hurts more than guessing. You thank him anyway because politeness is how you hold the seams together. As you turn to leave, you notice a cardboard box at the end of the hallway, labeled Personal Effects. On top sits a pair of scuffed work boots untied, side by side, as if waiting for their owner to return from a short errand. You hesitate, then keep walking. Outside, the mist has begun to lift. The sun edges over the rooftops, timid but certain. The bakery smells of sugar and warm air. You think of how the town will spend this day, some choosing relief, others caution, everyone craving closure that may never come. You pass a group of teenagers sitting on the courthouse steps, scrolling through their phones, their voices bright with the kind of detachment only the young can manage. One says, "My mom went to school with him," and the others whistle softly, the sound equal parts awe and disbelief. A few blocks later, you stop at the library again. Miss Dorian is there, sorting through returns, humming something ancient. She looks up. "You're back early," she says. "Couldn't sleep," you answer. She nods, like she's heard that all morning. "They're already calling it the Harbor Case Miracle," she says. You know, in some of those law journals, they'll debate this for years. Whether justice delayed is still justice. Whether evidence grows old the way people do. You smile faintly. "You think they'll ever agree?" She chuckles. "Academics never agree. That's their heartbeat." She gestures to a stack of returned books. "Found something odd in the drop box this morning. No card, no note, just this." She slides a small worn leather notebook across the desk. You open it carefully. The first page holds a single sentence in neat handwriting. "We all leave traces, but only some become evidence." You look at her, but she's already walking away to reshelve returns, pretending not to notice your pulse quicken. You flip through the pages. Most are blank, but a few contain sketches, shoes, laces, and patterns of soles. At the bottom of one page, faint pencil marks read, "Wind chimes make sound only when the world moves." You close the notebook gently. Outside, the day grows bright. You walk back toward the creek, notebook in your jacket pocket. The ash tree stands tall, its branches thin against the rising sun. A few people linger near the bridge, reporters, maybe, or residents paying their respects. The water moves quietly, patient as breath. You rest your hands on the railing, the same place you did the night before, and let the silence find its shape. You think of the shoemaker, his porch, his chimes, his strange kindnesses. You think of Eva, the way she vanished between heartbeats. You think of science and chance and how they sometimes blur into each other until you can't tell which one delivered the truth. And you think of the town, your town, that will spend the next months rewriting its stories in careful pen, scratching out old names, penciling in new ones, trying to live with both. A breeze stirs, gentle but definite. For the first time in days, you hear the faint clinking of wind chimes, high, distant, from somewhere near Harbor Street. You don't know if it's real or a memory pretending to be music, but you let it play anyway. You lean into the sound, eyes half closed, and breathe. You don't know yet whether the man in custody is guilty, You don't know if the DNA will hold up or if the case will unravel again like a thread in tired fabric. You only know that for the first time in years, the town feels like it's exhaling, even if what fills its lungs next is uncertainty. You walk home through streets that seem new in the daylight, paint brighter, porches cleaner, air less heavy. Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's the light. You reach your door, pause, and look back once. The mural catches the sun. The girl, running with lanterns, is brighter than ever, and the shoelace glints like something still alive. You whisper into the quiet, "We're still looking, Eva." The words float, soft as dust, then disappear. Inside, your house smells of last night's candle smoke and coffee. You sit by the window again, open the notebook, and stare at the blank pages left behind. You pick up a pen. You don't write the ending, you just write "begin again." The ink spreads slowly, seeping into paper like morning light into water. Now the night folds itself around you again, soft and forgiving. The story drifts to a hush, and all the sharp edges blur. You can feel your breathing slow, the way waves settle after a long tide. The fan hums. The lights dim to a memory. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and then thinks better of it. You think of small towns at night, the glow of porch bulbs, the hum of refrigerators, and the unhurried language of crickets. You think of every place that has ever waited for answers and learned to live with questions instead. There's peace in that, a strange kind of grace. Because uncertainty, when held gently, feels almost like faith. Let your shoulders drop. Let your thoughts unspool, thread by thread, until only quiet remains. The river still flows, the ash tree still leans into the wind, and the chimes still know how to sing when the world decides to move again. You are part of that rhythm now, listening, waiting, breathing. The town's lights flicker out one by one until there's only starlight left. Each star a whisper, a promise that not everything lost stays gone forever. The night exhales, long and low. Maybe you close your eyes. Maybe you keep them half open, watching shadows shift. It doesn't matter. What matters is the stillness, the kind that knows your name, that says it's okay to rest now. The story can hold itself for a while. You've done enough just by listening. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well.